Now we'll move on to the conduct of business.
Item 6A, adopt resolution related to the emergency repair to the Crestmoor Canyon, ratifying the proclamation of a local emergency of the city manager on December 3rd, 2019, waiving competitive bidding requirements pursuant to state law and the San Bruno Municipal Code due to the existence of an emergency, authorizing the city manager to execute necessary contracts to mitigate the emergency and to appropriate such funds from the Emergency Disaster Reserve Fund.
City Manager.
Good afternoon, Mayor Medina, members of the City Council, public here, and both those watching at home. My name is Javon Grogan, and I'm the City Manager. We're here tonight to present a presentation and ask for a confirmation of an emergency proclamation that was issued on December 3rd. I will give tonight's presentation, but I am here with our Public Works Director, Jimmy Tan, that can answer any specifics. And so what's before you tonight is to adopt a resolution and various actions related to the emergency repair of a landslide in Crestmoor Canyon. There are actually 3 items before you tonight. One is the ratifying the proclamation of the local emergency declaration by the city manager on December 3rd, waive competitive bidding requirements pursuant to state law and San Bruno Municipal Code due to the existence of that emergency, and then authorize the city manager to execute necessary contracts to mitigate the emergency and to appropriate such funds from the city's Emergency Disaster Reserve Fund. So we have a brief presentation. First, we have a little background, some photos. Then we want to talk about the preliminary slope stabilization plan, present our preliminary cost estimates, talk to you and the community about the timeline, and we will get to the 3 actions for council and take any questions. So a little bit of history. As those of us that are familiar with the Crestmoor Canyon, the Crestmoor Canyon area proper has a history of landslides. The landslides really date back to the first observed ones were in 1946 actually, and there was a major landslide in 1955. But just the soft soils around the mouth of the canyon really creates an area where there is the potential for slides. There was a geological and geotechnical study of Crestmoor Canyon in 2008 that identified 9 sites of potential landslides. In the area that we're going to talk about today was erosion slide area priority number 1 with the potential for additional subsidence of moderate and high. That was later followed up by a July 2018 geotechnical investigation of this specific area, looking at various slope stabilization options. And the report really investigated 3 of them. We'll talk about one of those today. And prior to this slide, there was, as the City Council knows, a funded capital project of $300,000 to design a solution to this area. What we know is that staff received a call on December 2nd letting us know of a potential slide near a stormwater outlet just up from Crestmoor Drive. That area was investigated, and what we saw was approximately 30 feet of the hillside fell towards the lower portion of the canyon. Those that sort of know this area, if you go back 20 years, there was about 60 feet of hillside, and prior to about 2 weeks ago, we still had 40 feet. And so Mother Nature hit us in the gut, and we lost 30 feet of the hillside in one fell swoop, which really created an urgent situation because we really only have about 10 feet of hillside remaining between the sidewalk and San Bruno Avenue, and it's critically important that we protect the integrity of that roadway. And so on December 3rd, I took the action to declare the emergency. That way we could immediately use funds from our disaster recovery to begin to address this issue. And so there are a couple slides. Slide 6 just shows us where that is in relation to the entire 78-acre canyon. And as the community knows, there's approximately 137 homes that border the canyon, a school, and this is another picture from December 2nd at the base of the canyon that shows the field that fell from the top, as well as some of the landscape. That is one of the drone pictures that we called out the day that we observed the landslide, just so we can get eyes on what occurred. And this image shows the 10 feet that is remaining of the hillside before you get to the sidewalk. And so, as the community knows, we immediately took actions to close the westbound travel lane of San Bruno Avenue. We called out geotechnical experts that recommended closing that lane and the sidewalk as a precaution. It is safe now, but we really wanted to stop some of the vibrations just to further not damage the roadway. So these are images of what it looks like now. This is another image of the drone actually being operated on December 3rd, so we can get eyes on what was going on. And the contractors and staff went out and marked the hillside so we can observe the hillside over these rains over the past weekend. And so we know that since December 2nd, no additional hillside has been lost. And so we have a preliminary slope stabilization plan. So let's talk about that. What this calls for, and draft is stamped there because a lot of people are doing a lot of fast work to figure out exactly what is the plan. We initially approached this thinking that we would have to do a two-pronged approach. One would be a temporary fix followed by a permanent fix. What we've been able to identify is the ability to implement a permanent fix immediately. And so that is the image you have before you. Where the word draft is actually the westbound side of San Bruno Avenue. The plan calls for installing 12 shear pins drilled approximately 50 feet down to the bedrock that are supported and anchored back with what's called tiebacks underneath the sidewalk and the roadway. And so there's a number of infrastructure challenges in the roadway. There is PG&E assets, both gas lines and a high-capacity electrical voltage line. And so PG&E has been out, and we've been working very closely with them. And we will be sending our slope stabilization plans to them for review and concurrence. And so this is another image that shows that vertical 50 feet of a shear pin going down into the bedrock with a tieback underneath the roadway for additional support. So preliminary cost, we have 3 areas for some of the immediate work. The storm drain repair, that work has been authorized and mobilization is occurring right now. There's a storm drain that is directly in front of this area, and we would like to attach a pipe to the end of that storm drain and carry it all the way down to the base of the canyon to prevent any erosion that's being that is occurring because of the city's stormwater pipe. Slope stabilization, we have a preliminary quote for the shear pinning of $580,000. We estimate that project management will be another $70,000. And then there's a couple additional work that needs to be completed or additional cost items. One is a contingency, and we estimate that to be approximately 15% of the total project cost. We've incurred some costs for traffic control, and there will be more as lanes on both sides of San Bruno Avenue may have to be closed at various times during the construction. There will need to be a repaving of both the sidewalk and at the very least the westbound travel lane to have a very smooth and sealed road surface so we do not have the cracks in the water penetrating through the cracks in the sidewalk and the roadway surface. And there may be additional measures that we have to take that are currently being investigated. And so this is an example of what's called Shot Creek. The immediate work to drill 12 shear pins 50 feet down will stabilize the hillside, protect the sidewalk, and also protect the roadway. What that will not protect is the hillside, and we may still very, very well lose hillside. So additional work that is being investigated is what's called Shot Creek, and that's essentially spraying concrete onto the hillside to lock it in place. That will likely have to be a phase 2 scope of work for this project. And so what we really want to tackle under the emergency declaration is the immediate work that's needed to stabilize the hillside, the sidewalk, and the roadway. And so our preliminary timeline. As I mentioned, the storm drain repair is occurring as we speak. We expect that work to be completed around December 20th. The slope stabilization is essentially ASAP. As soon as the final designs are done and we get those reviewed and approved through the emergency declaration, we are going to immediately begin that work because we want to protect the integrity of the roadway and the sidewalk. We think it will take approximately 2 weeks for the structural design and review and approval, another 2 weeks for the procurement of the materials, and 4 weeks, weather permitting, for the construction. And so we are moving as fast as we can, and I'm extremely proud of the work that staff has undertook, as well as our various geotechnical consultants working with PG&E. Up until this point, it's been a very seamless process, and I want to thank the Public Works Department and all of our contractors for all of their hard work. But this is the situation where we find ourselves in, and we're doing everything we can to protect the community and protect the public asset. So the actions that are before the council tonight are three. One is ratifying the proclamation of the local emergency that was done again on December 3rd. Item 2 is waiving the competitive bid requirements pursuant to state law and the San Bruno Municipal Code due to the existence of the emergency. Authorize the city manager to execute necessary contracts to mitigate that emergency and to appropriate such funds that would be necessary from the city's Emergency Disaster Reserve Fund. So that concludes my presentation. Here to answer any questions from council. Thank you.
Questions? Staff from council?
Just
Michael?
one quick thing that popped into my head. So with the redirection of the storm drain to go farther down, is that going to move the problem somewhere else, or does it tie into something else where the water can be
It currently
accommodated?
deposits into the base of the canyon, into the creek, and so that will essentially carry it. Right now, actually, if I back up, what most residents will remember is a pipe sticking out of the hillside, dropping water straight down. That pipe has broken off, and so water is dropping down sort of really close adjacent to the soil and eroding that away. What the pipe will do is it will reattach to what's existing and carry the water all the way down to the base of the canyon where it was always being deposited and then carried through the creek.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Laura?
I was just going to comment, thank you for the presentation, and thank you for really keeping us informed of what's going on. And I know staff has been there, even monitoring the hillside throughout the rain and the storms, making sure that there's safety and if there's any concerns we should know about right away. So I thank you for that as well.
Horny?
Yes, thank you. As for the one bid, we did contact a number of different contractors out there. I wonder if you can kind of share that.
Sure, absolutely. We contacted a number of different contractors, over approximately 3, and I can have the Public Works Director stand up to talk a little bit about that process.
Correct. Once we noticed the issue, we contacted several contractors. One was GMB, who couldn't, perform this type of work. It's a really specialty type of contractor that deals with the hillside, mitigation efforts, so erosions. So with that, there were 2 other contractors that we contacted. One was Hillside Drilling, who specializes in this type of work, and the other one was Condon Johnson. So we met both of the contractors out in the field to discuss the scope of work. Hillside Drilling is the one that submitted the cost proposal. Condon Johnson informed me today that they wouldn't be willing to do it within the schedule that we want to have this thing completed, because they're already committed to other projects at this moment. And so.
Thank you for that. And my next question is for this emergency resolution that the city manager will be reporting back once a month. Can you provide some details on how that works?
Yeah, the requirement is once a month. I'll report back at every regularly scheduled city council meeting. We'll also continue to keep the community informed via next door post. And we've done one press release in after tonight's meeting, we'll do another to update the larger media that has been covering this story.
Right. One last comment is, at some point, we'll be looking at putting a guardrail along that edge. You know, right now, that's not the emergency, but it just, at some point, somebody's going to evaluate and determine whether it's really needed there, and it seems like it would be, that it's a big steep drop. Just curious, at some point, that probably be brought back.
That is not a part of this emergency. I'm not sure if that was ever talked about as a prior capital project. There are a number of sort of areas in the community, just because we live in a hilly area, where there are sometimes guardrails, there are sometimes not. Along this western side of Crestmoor Canyon, there's over 300 or 500 feet of an area where there is a hillside on the other side. And so we can look at that and talk about that during our capital project planning.
Thank you very much.
And then just for myself, Jimmy, since you're standing there, please convey our thanks and appreciation to the staff and for the work that you and the department have done through the storm and trying to get that as stabilized as quickly as possible. So we have 3 items for action. Can they be taken all together, or do they have to be separate?
No, there is one resolution with all 3 actions included.
Okay. So there's a resolution. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the resolution.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Mayor Medina?
Aye.